This week's episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast is brought to you by SugarCRM. If your sales team is struggling to close deals, SugarCRM can introduce you to modern, insight-driven sales. Energize your CRM with Sugar. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 20 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by giving the podcast a positive review on Apple Podcast or whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We are also live every Thursday, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live. Jeff, how you doing this week?
Pretty good, David. Yourself?
I'm doing great. They're not going to catch us live this Thursday, though.
That's my fault, right?
I mean, I think it's like once everyone's like, let's do it sooner, it's like, sure, you know? Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like wondering, should we keep it out like that it's not Thursday? Because, I mean, we got, the people that join us live, but everyone else, they wouldn't know.
True.
Who'd be the wiser? Anna, how are you doing this week?
Good. I just, it's hard to schedule around Jeff because he only fishes on days ending in Y. That's what I'm saying.
It's true.
He's living the dream now.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to.
Yeah, just, where are you going? Fishing. Oh, right. So just somewhere different. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be at a children's carnival, likely having the time of my life. Field day. I hope I get to do mosquito tag again. That was fun. All right. Before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, SugarCRM. This week's episode is brought to you by SugarCRM and the CRM Buyer's Guide for Manufacturing. In an era where even large manufacturing companies must be agile to address shifting markets, stressed supply chains, and changing customer demands, the ability to provide a connected and compelling customer experience is of extreme importance. The right CRM solution can go a long way to satisfy the needs of every key customer-facing group. When all stakeholders work from the same playbook and within a fundamentally easy system, creating and maintaining that experience becomes a much simpler task. So download the playbook, the CRM Buyer's Guide for Manufacturing, right now. Our first story this week. TRUMPF opens new smart factory. That's TRUMPF, the company. Last week, machine maker TRUMPF officially opened a new 40 million smart manufacturing factory. Let me just do all that over again. Last week, machine maker TRUMPF officially opened a new $40 million smart factory in Farmington, Connecticut. The plant will expand local machine tool production and serve as the headquarters for the company's billion-dollar North American subsidiary. The factory uses TRUMPF's fabricating equipment to make sheet metal parts for its U.S.-manufactured TRUMPF machinery. It also serves as a proving grounds where manufacturers can visit to see automation, connectivity, and data-driven production in action. The plant adds 55,800 square feet of production space to cut, bend, and weld thousands of different parts. TRUMPF's machines are everywhere in the industry, used to make everything from cars and aircraft to data center cabinets and fitness equipment. The subsidiary's executive vice president, Bilked, says the factory provides a, quote, blueprint that enables manufacturers to reshore production and remain cost competitive while adapting to changing needs, overcoming skilled labor shortages, and meeting strict safety standards. Jeff, it sounds like these smart factories really lean in on the automation creates jobs narrative.
Well, it's interesting because, and I think, it's a German company here that is making some significant investments in U.S. manufacturing, really serving as kind of the role model of what we want U.S. manufacturers to be, and the fact that they had a rough fiscal year. Their last fiscal year, they were down in sales, they were down in revenue, but yet they're still making this significant investment, and not just in the U.S., but in Connecticut. not the least expensive place by any stretch to pay people. The tax laws are very difficult. They didn't get a lot of incentive here, I don't think, from the local government other than, hey, we like that you're doing this. This is great. So there's a lot of positive here in terms of them not only telling their customers to make investments in technology and do the right thing in terms of investing in their business and growing it that way organically, but doing it themselves and really setting the example. Again, not an easy place to do it. And, I think the other thing that was interesting too in the announcement was how they called out the workforce development element of it. If we're going to invest in this technology, we also need to make sure we're investing in your people so that they can fully utilize and get the best ROI out of the equipment as well.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting call. I think that is sort of a European influence there in terms of, you can have the best equipment, make the greatest facilities, but you got to take care of your people as well. And again, paying folks in Connecticut, it's more expensive than other places. So this is interesting on a couple of fronts.
No, I thought these smart factories are just flat impressive. When you look at the video of how highly automated and the way they sort of are working together is incredible. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to check out one of these facilities, but what did you think of TRUMPF and its expanding footprint of these smart factory systems?
Well, obviously it's great to see that stuff play out. And I think Jeff covered, some of the basic objectives for that plan are really smart, of course. I thought the economic development piece was also interesting because I noticed right around the same time they opened this new factory, there was like a separate announcement about TRUMPF and the strategic supply chain initiative that Connecticut has undertaken.
Okay.
So TRUMPF has actually become the first company to receive funding under that program. And they are going to receive a $2.5 million grant to actually, what the release said, enhance production capacity and bring manufacturing operations into Connecticut. The Department of Economic and Community Development also approved TRUMPF for incentives of up to $373,000 in tax rebates if it creates 63 new full-time equivalent jobs. There was no time frame given for that job creation, initiative, but I did think it was interesting, based on what you also said. So TRUMPF currently employs about 500 people in the state. This grant seemed like it was announced actually after the completion of this smart factory project, but you kind of wonder how long it's been on the table, and part of those discussions. And I thought that was interesting because to me, it looked like Connecticut was maybe taking us more of like a prove it type approach to some of that, incentive and economic development, because you see it go wrong a lot of times in other places where there's this lavish outpouring of support prior to a project taking place. And then afterwards, when it doesn't work out in such a grand fashion, there's a lot of untangling, or maybe worse, you don't even get your investment back.
Yeah.
Here, Connecticut is like, all right, cool. Almost like you put your money where your mouth is, and then maybe we'll come through with some other things. It looks like they are now helping TRUMPF continue with that investment project and maybe making Connecticut continue to be a huge part of their footprint, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, a little more than shovels, hard hats, and photo opportunities.
Yeah, it's a completely done facility. It's all done.
No, and I think these facilities are very impressive. I want to call them like almost smart micro factories. Since 2017, TRUMPF has installed more than 300 of these smart factory systems in North America, and they're all just heavily automated. Kind of looking into the system a little bit more. So this one in Connecticut has a 180-foot large-scale storage system that the company calls a STOPA, and that serves as like the intelligent spine of the factory. And that automates material flow to 5 different state-of-the-art types of machines that are either cutting, bending, or punching metal. And to see how carefully orchestrated all this is, it's very impressive. And I think that I'm actually going to try and take the opportunity to go and see one of these things because the one's really close. There's one in Waunakee, Wisconsin. So Troy Berg, who's the CEO of Dane Manufacturing, he says that these smart factories are actually helping leverage automation to grow jobs, increase productivity, and profitability. And I don't know, I thought it was really cool to see it going into Connecticut. I was really cool to see that there are 299 more of these throughout North America. And then I thought it was really cool to see that there was one 10 miles up the road. And it is incredibly impressive. And it's one of those where, you kind of see like the rendering of the how it's going to work together, and you don't really understand the scale of it. And then you see like actual people walking next to it, and you're like, that is a massive, massive machine.
It's an incredible sales tool.
Yeah.
I mean, no better way to sell it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, it's a proof of concept, right? It's like, hey, if you don't believe this is how it works, come and see it, And with that many locations, it's kind of easy to get to one, you would think. All right. Our next most popular story, crime ring accused of stealing $83 million in Amazon cargo. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Central California recently shared details of a wild crime syndicate that targeted the e-commerce giant. Law enforcement officials in Florida and California have allegedly arrested 13 members and associates of Armenian organized crime syndicates. These individuals face 5 different federal complaints, but one involves Amazon and millions of dollars in stolen cargo. According to the California DA, the group is a, quote, Russian mafia-affiliated transnational criminal organization that has been operating a crime ring out of L.A. In one particular operation, members of this crime ring posed as truck drivers and enrolled with Amazon as carriers. After receiving the goods, they diverted some or all of these shipments that were meant for Amazon's warehouses. The DOJ found, quote, photos and videos of warehouses lined with boxes of crockpots, Keurig coffee machines, keratin shampoo, Weber grills, and other goods, end quote. It's a lot of goods. Amazon estimates that 83 million in goods were stolen. CNBC says industry-wide cargo theft losses are close to $1 billion or more a year. Amazon is, quote, plagued by reoccurring thefts of its shipments, and while it has ramped up its efforts to track down illegal behavior, cargo theft is still a widespread activity. Jeff, is this something that can be kind of chalked up as a growing pain for Amazon? Just because it has scaled so fast and it's so massive that, it needs drivers to deliver all these shipments, and it's easy to kind of see how like 13 bad actors can kind of get in the mix.
Well, I think this is a demonstration. This is something we talk about in cybersecurity a lot, how the threat actors have evolved and how they've become much more aware of all the little things and all the different nooks and crannies of an organization that they can creep into and leverage those weaknesses to do bad things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're seeing here is basically these syndicates identified some weak points here, whether it was basically being able to get inside these facilities, number one, and just pose as Amazon drivers without added security protocols or something else in place here is kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. I know I always preface my not wanting to be the conspiracy guy by then presenting a conspiracy, but don't you feel like they also had to have somebody on the inside here?
Well, I don't know if they were posing as Amazon carriers. I think they were Amazon carriers. Like
so
how
they got hired.
Well, yeah, like how Amazon really relies on like those third-party contractors.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my biggest takeaway is like I think of how many people deliver packages in my neighborhood just in their own cars. Like they show up in their own vehicle, whip a package on the porch, and you're just like, what kind of vetting process went into that?
Yeah, I mean, in that respect, yeah, that could be a growing pain as they expand and try to use more third-party type folks. You could definitely see it. I mean, $83 million worth of stuff. They're not backing up in a minivan to load them up.
Yeah,
they're using
13 different minivans.
Yeah. They're using a little bit bigger logistical vehicle there, but I think Amazon is a $5 billion profitability. I mean, in profits. Yeah. That's not sales, just profits. So the $83 million is probably not something they pay a ton of attention to until you start getting, again, organized crime involved.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to wake people up. And again, there had to be something going on the inside. But I think what this also illustrates is that Amazon is paying attention to more of these things because of the different pressures that they're feeling on a price perspective. Mm-hmm. We don't know how the tariff things are going to impact them in terms of availability and pricing. So whenever you have somebody dipping into that a bit and stirring things up, that's going to get your attention, especially to this level. How many crock pots and coffee makers does it take to make $83 million?
It's a lot of keratin shampoo.
Man.
And well, Amazon does know how much the tariff impact was going to be. Remember, they were going to put it on.
Yeah.
And for some reason, some interested parties took issue with that tactic. And it went away. Surprising. Anna, we've talked about these third-party contractors a lot when it has come to safety, right? And whether or not a contractor is an employee and who's kind of responsible for when these contractors get into accidents and stuff like that. And it also just, it's kind of an old school story, right? Like $83 million in goods just fell off the back of the truck.
Fell off the back of a truck. Yeah, I mean, this one was tough for me to understand too, because I get that I get that Amazon is a massive logistics operation. However, $83 million in goods, to your point, like that's more than 13 people driving one truck somewhere else. I mean, that's it is, though. I mean, it absolutely
highly organized, yeah.
I mean, the report said that sometimes these drivers were showing up like days later with the rest of their goods on their trucks. There was definitely gaps in where they were not where they were supposed to be.
Where did you go?
That were being highlighted along the way. So how long did this actually go on before it was figured out that this was taking place? That's what I don't understand. I mean, that just seems like
it's more than thrift for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not exactly like they were just like tiptoeing into a warehouse and like, it just like, how did they not get caught?
Pretty blatant.
But I mean,
before $83 million in goods racked up, it just seemed like a long time. And, Amazon, for their part, they have been working really hard to try to get their arms around some of these issues, but they really haven't yet. So they had a blog post up on their website in as recently as January, talking about how cargo theft is up 300%, they said, across North America. Annual losses now over $20 billion each year. They offered a handy guide of best practices for load security for anyone who's looking to learn about that from Amazon, who clearly is the best at managing load security.
Yeah.
And then after that pitch, they close with, please, why don't you join our culture of security, apply to haul loads for Amazon. It was really kind of embarrassing that to read in the context of this.
Yeah. Here are the ways to secure your load. And why don't you secure ours?
Yeah, somebody
join our team.
Yeah. I think the other side of the coin, of course, is actually how much Amazon also benefits from selling stolen cargo, because they do, that's also been a documented scenario of all of the stolen goods that are sold via third party on a marketplace app where Amazon has no idea where they came from and does not validate that in any way. And then they're sold
or if it's come from the garbage.
Or if it's come from the garbage. Mm-hmm. Yes, we saw that report as well. That was Wall Street Journal, I believe, a couple years back. Figured that one out. So there's a lot of gaps in the procedures here. So it's like 83 million feels like a lot, but then you're like, well, Amazon does so much volume. They have a lot of these types of problems that just kind of crop up here and there.
I know. It sounds crazy to say that it's a scale problem, but really it is just on like the grandest scale.
It's the biggest scale. And, I looked at, I was reading some other accounts of this situation and the problem with cargo theft, and the American Journal of Transportation quoted someone from CargoNet named Keith Lewis, who recently said that in 5 years, we're going to look back and think of this as the good old days because this problem is only getting worse. The thieves are hooked on the money, and as we develop better ways to fight them, it seems they're always 2 or 3 steps ahead, which is what Jeff always says about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
But I thought that was sort of a scary quote.
Well, a scary quote, but so I wanted to put some of this in perspective. And these are rough numbers, but like Amazon, all of Amazon, so, data, entertainment, Amazon makes roughly $1.29 billion in revenue every single day. So we're talking about 6.5% of their daily revenue. That's what this was. So while we're thinking $83 million, how do you miss that? I mean, it's
pretty easy.
Pretty easy, yeah. And Anna, to your point, I was thinking schemes like this are only going to push forward more automation, right? Like Amazon already has some of the most sophisticated, if not the most sophisticated and automated warehouses on the planet. Mm-hmm. I feel like fully automated Rivians might not be that much farther away. A fully automated Rivian with your little robot dog to deliver your package to your doorstep. And it's like, I know that we talk about that being weird and dystopian, but while we have $83 million worth of goods going out the door. I mean, that's 83 million reasons to just invest a little bit more in making that a little bit.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be just as easy to hack that vehicle?
I mean, maybe, because like it made me think of the tequila heist, right? Where they hacked the GPS and just sent them to the wrong place where they're like, well, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. And they're like, hi, I'm here to take your vehicle now.
No, I think it's just, it gets into more traceability. We've already talked about that. We talk about that all the time with supply chain and software. More of that and not rounding off the edges, because it can be very tedious and it takes time and everything else away from what you're doing. But if you want to save $83 million, maybe slapping a QR code or something on more stuff and scanning it could be worth it.
No, completely agreed. And I do apologize. I do have a new laptop. If anyone can hear this one taking off like an airplane, and we're just going to put it to bed. You know what? We're just going to do it live. It'll be okay.
Yep.
The helicopter has landed.
Easy, fella. If anyone in the Madison area is e-waste expert, I have something for you. All right, our next most popular story. The U.S. Mint moves forward with plans to kill the penny. Penny, penny, easy spent, copper brown, and worth 1 cent. Or is it? The Treasury Department last week said the U.S. Mint has made its final order of penny blanks. After they run out, the plan is to stop producing the penny. The move comes after penny-making costs increased some 20% in 2024. The Treasury says the cuts will realize an immediate annual savings of $56 million. There are 114 billion pennies currently in circulation. Now, some say the cuts make sense, and that's unintentional pun. Sorry about that. It costs almost 4 cents to make a penny now, but some say it still has usefulness in charity drives and is a relative bargain compared to the nickel, which costs almost 14 cents to mint. The U.S. Mint made 3.2 billion pennies last year, more than half of all new coins made. Now, there are some logistical problems that remain, including like the need to round up pricing. Note that they say we need to round up, and not that we're going to be rounding down.
No one ever rounds down.
We won't be rounding down for the penny.
No.
It's a rather interesting problem. Jay Zagorski, professor of markets, public policy, and law at Boston University, told the AP that simply ditching the penny will only increase demand for nickels, which are even more expensive. And let's also remember that these are manufacturing jobs on the line. Anna, penny for your thoughts?
Well played.
You got it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, everyone's talking about this story. I heard my 71-year-old father bring this up to me. I heard my 10-year-old daughter bring it up to me. It really, it's really taken America by storm, this topic. We all have an opinion on the penny. It's as the buying power of a penny recedes to the point where people won't even pick it up off the ground. Like, you can kind of see the motivation behind this change just seems less necessary over time. It really does. I mean, There was a time we had a half penny. We don't.
Yeah.
I'm not crying any tears. Canada already eliminated their own penny.
Mm-hmm.
They said it had very little economic impact. So I don't think this is a terrible decision, honestly. But what I do think pertains to our audience most, and that's what I want to cover today, is the production side of it, which has not really been covered a lot in the narrative around killing this penny, but what type of impact this would have on the workers that are currently producing these pennies. So there's a factory called Artisan Zinc. It's in Greene County, Tennessee. They are the nation's sole manufacturer of penny blanks. So the mayor of that region, Kevin Morrison, says the production of pennies has helped to support around 250 direct jobs. But he is hoping that a broader portfolio within that company, including some foreign currencies, will mean that the closure of the penny production line will have minimal impact. That's what he's hoping. He also added that that they're trying to work with the federal government on alternatives, revenue streams and other opportunities that the federal government might have, which made me wonder if maybe they're going to take a crack at the nickel, because they do nickel plating. The company on its website talks about how its process is, I think they have this proprietary process for coin production that is incredibly efficient, according to them. And they don't currently make the nickel. The nickel's made in other U.S. mint plants, I think in Pennsylvania and another East Coast state. You know, they talk about the forward-thinking innovation that's happening at this plant. Maybe they will find a way to solve both problems at once. This nickel problem is I guess the next hurdle.
I mean, it's
14 cents a nickel. Yeah.
It's a significant hurdle.
It is. But I don't think that you can say like, because that is also expensive, we will never kill the penny. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Like that is just, you got to figure, I mean, in this age of cost cutting seemingly arbitrarily, this one actually sort of makes sense to me. I don't know, just my opinion. But so hopefully this plant will be able to continue to survive in Greene County, Tennessee. And again, maybe they'll find new ways to kind of make up the loss. Well,
I feel like if they could cut the cost of the nickel in half, they have quite a compelling argument to steal the business. But it is, I do think, you know, sometimes what is lost in a lot of these efficiency measures that we're talking about are the jobs that will be directly impacted. And to your point, hopefully they're able to find new work. Jeff, you know, I feel like almost, so I think since I've been 8, they've been talking about killing the penny. So it's been an argument, well, let's just say for a long time. But do you think it'll actually get done this time? Is the penny soon to be a relic of the past?
Well, let's remember, there's 114 billion pennies still in circulation, so it's not dead. It's not done. We're just not going to make any more for now.
Yeah.
And that is a key tone of this administration as well. Anything that's done, it's for now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can bring the penny back if we need to. I think it makes a ton of sense from a cost savings perspective, from an application perspective, and I don't see these wide-reaching negative impacts that a lot of people are forecasting.
Yeah.
I saw a stat that said something like 16% of only 16% of all transactions are done using cash.
Yeah.
40% of all people don't even use cash right now. You talked about your daughter and your dad talking about this. My wife, who works in banking, and my daughters, who are becoming much more economically aware, this isn't even on their radar.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we just don't think about it that much. I think the rounding up, rounding down is going to have such a minimal impact because, again, we have 114 billion pennies still out there.
But it'll be a pain for one news cycle. You know, where people will just be like, everything just went up 4 cents.
I don't even think that's going to happen because that would only be needed if you were paying in cash.
Yeah.
Which just, I mean, when I go through the drive-through once in a while, I'll do that if I have the coin sitting in the ashtray.
But you can't still have things that cost anything other than like 5 or 10.
What I read is the only time that this would need to happen, rounding up, rounding down. Now, if you want to fix your prices that way, that's up to you.
Yeah.
But if you still want something to be $1.99 because somebody's paying with a card, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
You'd only need to round up if it's cash.
Okay.
And if we've got 16% of all transactions that are using cash, this just isn't going to happen very often.
Yeah.
I just don't see it being a big impact. And we look at copper, which is not used in great quantities on the penny, but is still a very valuable mineral right now. We have all these mining debates over copper. This is a good move there too. Okay. If we're even saving a couple ounces here and there, that's positive. What I hope doesn't happen is we're sort of kicking the can down the road a little bit with the nickel, because again, nickel is a metal and a material that we need for a lot of other stuff right now. We need it if we're going to go forward with electric vehicles and batteries. We need it for other defense initiatives, things like that. Nickel is a valuable material. And if we're already looking at a 5-cent coin costing 14 cents to make, if that's going to become in greater demand, which I don't think it will.
Yeah.
But let's make sure we're not, again, just creating another problem by trying to solve this one.
What if you just digitize the penny and the nickel and just like crypto nickel?
Crypto nickel?
And then if you and then you could just like email it to someone.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
One
widespread fraud.
One last thought. What do you think the 2025 pennies are going to be worth? Presuming they're the last ones.
Last year pennies.
Oh man,
there are projections. These are for collectors.
Yep. So there's going to be penny hoarding now.
Potentially.
Yeah. I don't know. I look forward to using pennies in odd situations, much as I like to use a $2 bill here and there.
So for collectors, they're saying some of these 20, 25 pennies could be worth like 50 cents.
What?
That's wild. I got to get on it now. I'm going to start.
You could produce 3 nickels with that.
Go.
Mike J on our website had a really interesting comment. He said, using the cost to make the coin as the reason to drop it just seems short-sighted. I just pulled a 1978 penny from my pocket, so that cost should be spread out over the lifetime of the coin. And I thought that was a really interesting, it's not disposable. Sure, it costs a little bit more to make it, but I mean, it's around for a long time. Again, I'm not arguing for the penny, just saying that's an interesting point.
It's reusable. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Well, and on that, not to go way down this rabbit hole, but there's also the recyclability dynamic here. Yeah. A lot of people have coins, actual money in their homes that they just don't spend or don't use. Getting that stuff back to the bank so that they can be either used monetarily or just recycled for the material is also important.
Yeah, another good point.
The old COVID coin shortages. I do really hope that they stick around at least enough for the press a penny. I'm a sucker for those anywhere. The penny was one of the first coins made in the United States after it was established in 1792. Now, going back to my other point, the first serious attempt to eliminate the penny was in 1990. Did you guys look into this at all? A congressman named Jim Colby, I'm pretty sure, a Republican from Arizona, first introduced the Price Rounding Act of 1989. He spent 20 years of his life trying to kill the penny. And at first, it was kind of a noble cause. He wanted to help the copper industry in Arizona by getting rid of the paper dollar and replacing it with a copper coin dollar. Instead, he found out that there was widespread support for killing the penny. So he and a couple of colleagues bundled the idea of this new copper coin dollar with the idea of killing the penny. And he actually got a lot of traction. But you know who he kind of ran into? Dennis Hastert was the Speaker of the House at the time. Do you remember where he represented? Or he was a representative of Illinois. And so he kept killing it because he was from the land of Lincoln.
Oh, Lincoln, yeah.
And that's probably why we still have a penny. Otherwise, it would have been gone 20 years ago. But I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a cool story because I remembered it being such a hot topic. And just even when I was a kid being like, I don't care. Like, kill it. Whatever you want. Anyway, our next most popular story. Shoemaker looks to outsmart tariffs, labor woes with automation boost. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that Keen Footwear closed its facility in Portland, Oregon, but plans to relocate to a 60,000 square foot site in Kentucky. It's scheduled to open next month, and Keen expects it to nearly double domestic output. The company credits increased automation with the growth, and the Kentucky plant will support 24 workers that Keen plans to initially hire. The Wall Street Journal tells a tale as old as time. The machinery will handle mundane tasks, allowing the employees to focus on more detailed work. Keen hopes to grow as production increases. The development is a rather lucky break for Keen as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to make evolving tariff threats. The company made the investment long before this trade war drama even started, and they were founded back in 2003 because Keen wanted to start domestic footwear production in 2010 as a direct response of Chinese manufacturing costs and a desire to diversify sourcing. Now, the company makes about a third of its shoes at its factories in the Dominican Republic, Thailand, and the U.S. The remainder still come from contract manufacturers in India, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Look at that, Anna. Keen put its best foot forward years ago before reshoring was both cool and super necessary and can hopefully reap a few benefits as a result.
All right, but people have been talking about reshoring for decades. I mean, it was cool back then. I mean, do you remember the reshoring initiative, the reshoring institute? Like, I mean, constantly being told about, this.
Oh yeah.
But yes.
That's why I said both cool and necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it was cool back then and everyone was just like, oh, that would be neat.
Neat.
We should all do that.
Yes, it was pre-aggressive and evolving tariffs. That's true. I thought it was funny how manufacturing has been in the spotlight, obviously, again, the last few months and prior with the election and all that stuff because of these politically charged issues like tariffs. And those are particularly timely right now. But what's not timely is manufacturers carving out a competitive advantage via automation investments. And in my opinion, I think that's a good sign. Like, we're in this age of like a tariff war room and AI governance reports and policies and these business twists that sort of applied through the lens of 2025, whereas this tried and true method like automation, I'm glad that stuff is not being overlooked.
Yeah.
Even though it's not breaking news anymore.
Yeah.
Like automation is still, I think, the biggest driver of efficiency in a factory. There's a lot of development going on behind the scenes that these automation companies are just getting more and more intelligent, more and more efficient, more and more interesting, more energy efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So as they develop those new capabilities, I think it's good to see that like these tried and true methods are still being applied and people are making a big deal about it. And, outsmarting tariffs is a very 2025 way to put it, but this is an old strategy.
Yeah.
But it still works. So.
Wait, Anna, let me know if you've heard of this. Automation is going to be huge.
What?
Just going to be crazy huge.
I hope you're right about that.
Well, and I wanted to make sure that I got it right. So the company was founded in 2003. 7 years later is when they started bringing manufacturing back in 2010, just because they were having issues with their supply chain. But yeah, and I find it, well, and what's crazy is that people are still now like realizing cost savings with automation. Mm-hmm. And there's a multiplier now that people are using AI to make automation even smarter, making parts of the process more efficient. And I feel like we're moving into the next iteration of what automation can and will be.
Sure.
Jeff, I have Keatons. I love them. I mean, if I've ever visited your site in the manufacturing industry, you may have noticed I was wearing them because it's just a good product that I've always enjoyed ever since. Really, when they brought manufacturing back to the U.S. around 2010, they started sending out samples, so people could try them out. And I was just like, sure. And I've been a fan ever since. I don't know if you've had a chance to try them out ever, but
absolutely. No, great product. Mm-hmm. Anna kind of hit on this already. We like to focus on the tariffs and supply chain and everything here, but this makes a lot of sense economically for Keens as well. They're keeping their headquarters in Portland, in Oregon, but when you look at just from a labor savings, and we're looking at dozens of jobs here just to offer some scale. Yeah. It's not hundreds.
24 jobs.
Yeah, but they are going to be saving probably 20 to 25% just from a labor rate perspective. They also have like a 300,000 square foot distribution center right down the road in Louisville from this facility. So there's a lot of economic benefits and just operational benefits that they're going to realize from this as well. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, like the article said, they make 1.2 billion shoes that are shipped over from China versus the 25 million made here in the U.S. So it's great. We love the reshoring, not knocking that in any way, shape, or form, but there is a little perspective there. And I think, again, a lot of this decision was based just on a smart operational economic move, less with supply chain in mind, less with tariffs.
That's one thing that I liked. It was like, they're one of the first companies that said, the tariffs are a bonus, but like we were doing this anyways, instead of just being like, as a result of the shifting macroeconomic climate, we made the conscious decision to completely upend our operations and do something completely different in 3 months' time.
Yes.
Some people have mentioned issues with comfort, arch support, and design, but really it's hard to please everybody. And I do think that they could really gain some market share, especially in the outdoor recreation and work boot sectors, because, their competitors are 100% overseas, facing 49% tariff threats in Cambodia and Vietnam, 125% or more or less, or who knows, from China. So, it is while it is a sliver of what they are making, they do stand to kind of steal some business from some of their competitors.
Potentially. When you look at the textile industry, though, the labor rates in those countries still probably make that much more cost effective than moving a lot of that manufacturing here. Yeah. Not to totally go down that rabbit hole either right now, but yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. But I don't see a ton of other textile type folks reshoring just based on tariffs.
Yeah.
It has to make sense in other ways too.
No, agreed. All right. Our most popular story this week. Ford suit claims lemon law lawyers bilked them out of $100 million. Ford Motor Company recently flipped the script and filed a lawsuit against a group of lemon law attorneys alleging widespread fraud. Companies found in breach of lemon law are often on the hook for the legal fees of the customer, which means that there are certain law firms that specialize in these cases. Ford says that a group of 9 attorneys have been presenting the automaker with millions of dollars in bills for lemon law pursuing customers. A report in Car Scoops also says Ford has accused these law firms of working in tandem, which they say is tantamount to fraud in violation of the RICO Act. That's the federal law that targets corruption. Ford's suit outlines a, quote, magical mystery tour of fictitious billings, including a breakdown of nonsensical hourly charges. And this is where it really gets good. For example, Ford says that one attorney in the case billed Ford more than 20 hours a day, 66 different times. 34 of these incidents were reportedly bills above 24 hours in a day, and one even cites a mysterious 57.5-hour workday, just burning the midnight oil.
Yeah. It's really hardworking.
Ford also says one attorney billed them for traveling to 2 different cities for 2 different trials on the same day. But these cities, they were 380 miles apart. Ford's lawsuit says half of all the legal fee applications the automaker received were suspect. The company is not only seeking $300 million in damages, but it's warning other automakers that they might be affected too. Anna, are you sympathetic to the plight of the lemon lawyers? I mean, as they stand up to Big Auto? No, not at all.
This is crazy. So the Detroit Free Press had a really extensive and detailed article about this situation. And they actually interviewed a Ford spokesperson named Richard Binhammer, who was talking about how Ford's investigators discovered that these defendants had filed numerous cases on behalf of consumers against GM, Stellantis, BMW, Volkswagen, many automakers. So the investigation goes back about 4 years, and it started because Ford began to sense that they were being overbilled. Mm-hmm. And so they started to ask for complete timesheets from these law firms. And initially the lawyers refused, but a judge said that Ford had a right to these complete timesheets. So that's when they started to see some of the overbilling right there before their very eyes. But they were also reviewing those, that they were billing numerous clients for identical tasks being allegedly performed on the same day.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So that's kind of the genius part of the scheme, is that if true, they were spreading out these bills across numerous clients, numerous law firms. And that's why they're saying these firms were in cahoots with one another, because they were spreading it all out, even among the law firms. Ford's lawyer, Edward McNally, said in a statement, when you look at any single legal bill for a single case, it might show only 1 or 2 hours for a given lawyer on a given day. However, when Ford searched across public filings, the conduct in this case was carried out through a sophisticated and unlawful enterprise of attorneys and law firms that spread their fraudulent and inflated bills across thousands of cases and against many automakers. So that's why this is actually a pretty big deal. And they're saying that bringing in this RICO reference or accusation is a super big deal, because they're that's basically fraud, but at a federal level. That's a huge deal. If they can prove that took place, then they're in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. So
it sounds like there's a lot of smoke there to try and it's a very compelling argument.
I think there is a lot of smoke there. And, they said that it's one thing to say like, oh, we misbilled you or we miscoded a bill and it was an accident. But Ford is alleging, based on the data that they have, that this was a widespread, premeditated pattern.
Yeah.
And if those allegations are true, these legal experts are saying like the "oops, we made a mistake" excuse is not going to fly, and they're going to be like absolutely screwed.
Like, oops, we made 9 identical mistakes across separate law firms. You never,
right?
How it's crazy.
Yeah,
what a coincidence.
Yeah. So, and this a RICO crime is essentially what they're saying is, you know, you have to prove that it's this ongoing scheme, not just like a one-off. But I think they maybe have the proof of that based on what these articles are saying, and I guess we'll see it play out. But you can see why Ford is mad. For their own sake and their own money that they want to claw back from this, but also, you know, the implications for the entire automotive industry. That's pretty crazy.
Well, and the consumer, right? Because when Ford has to pay these costs, they trickle down to the
They
consumer.
come from somewhere, exactly.
Someone's going to pay for it. And so this type of fraud, allegedly, I mean, it doesn't help anybody. And I think it just is a prime example of how we've like shifted to this culture and how we have shifted to this culture of distrust, right? Like lemon law is a solid consumer protection that is like seemingly turned into toxic litigation, and like no one wins as a result, except like maybe the lawyers were until now.
Well, the consumers get their money back, you know. So I mean that it is functioning the way it should, but obviously there's a breakdown in the middle there.
Yeah, this small breakdown. So okay, so was the 57.5-hour bill day, that was just still one attorney though, right? Or are they saying that it was like multiple attorneys billing for the same thing for the same day? Like that had to be one guy, right?
That was the problem. Yeah. I mean, I think you could justify like we have 4 attorneys working on this case and they all put in 10 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what seemingly happened here. Otherwise, I don't think you have a crime.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, up until now, it seems like the law profession has just been a bunch of stand-up people anyways, and I can't believe, you know what? I am gobsmacked that this has happened.
I don't believe you.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
No, it's interesting when you look at the cyclical nature of this. So you started out having a law to basically help the consumer against the automaker. And as a result, it created this entire industry of lemon lawyers.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about 9 here. There are thousands of these firms that specialize in just this. And now we've come back to a point where the people that we're supposed to protect the consumer from are the ones holding the people helping those individuals. We're holding them accountable.
Yeah.
So the people we're supposed to hold accountable initially are now holding everybody else accountable to make sure they're doing it right.
Yeah.
This does not make sense.
It's all backwards, man.
This is pretty crazy, especially when you think about there's still about 150,000 vehicles annually that qualify for lemon law litigation.
Yeah.
So there's a definite need to protect the consumer in these instances. And what I'm afraid of is we have all of this back and forth with lawyers and courtrooms, and we forget about the 2 most important things. You mentioned the consumers, but it's also quality controls at the manufacturing level. There's a real easy way to get past a lot of the costs associated with all of this legal work. Build a better car.
Yeah, make sure it works.
So
no, it was very frustrating, and this was also props to producer Eric on the lemon graphic, the lemon car with the Ford logo. I mean, it's art. It's art. But Anna, like this was one of those stories that when you put together the report on Friday, I was reading it and I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy, and unfortunately, very indicative of where we are culturally, when just not even surprising. You're just like, oh, that makes sense. No.
The weird story.
All right, before we jump into, in case you missed it, the stories that are maybe not as popular on the websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by SugarCRM and the CRM Buyer's Guide for Manufacturing. In an era where even large manufacturing companies must be agile to address shifting markets, stressed supply chains, and changing customer demands, the ability to provide a connected and compelling customer experience is of extreme importance. The right CRM solution can go a long way to satisfy the needs of every key customer-facing group. When all stakeholders work from the same playbook and within a fundamentally easy system, Creating and maintaining that experience becomes a much simpler task. So download the playbook, the CRM Buyer's Guide for Manufacturing, right now. All right, in case you missed it, stories not as popular on the websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. I'll go first because this one was a bit of an oopsies on my part. It's it wasn't terribly missed. I missed it when I was putting together the rundown for the podcast last week. And this was actually in our top 5. And producer Eric was just like, what about that O-ring story? And I'm like, yeah, well, that was the week ago. And he's like, no, that was this week. And so this is kind of a in case I missed it story. O-ring debris causes more than $2 million in damage. And I mean, it's an NTSB story, so of course I'm going for it. On March 28th, 2024, the American Mariner suffered a steering failure and the bulk carrier struck the Muskung Channel junction light, a 31-foot diameter cylindrical fixed concrete structure with a giant light on top of it near Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The American Mariner sustained more than $800,000 in damage. The light sustained $1.25 million in damage. That's the light and the giant 31-foot wide concrete post. The bulk carrier was on its first voyage of the season, and while the bulk carrier was out of the water for the winter, a new steering control system was installed. After the accident, crew members looked at this new steering system and found that the number 1 control motor, which controlled the stroke of the main hydraulic pump, had failed. When the motor was pulled apart, a small piece of black pliable debris was found lodged between the rotating gears of the control motor, which stopped it from rotating properly. The technicians used a hammer to separate the gear assembly, and a, quote, non-metallic black piece of material was found lodged between the inner and outer gear machining and gear housing. In between the inner and outer gear machining and gear housing. Now, the 3 pieces of debris measured 2 millimeters to 4 millimeters in length. According to the NTSB, the likely cause of this accident and more than $2 million in damage was O-ring type material debris in the steering gear system's hydraulic oil, which became lodged within a control motor, caused it to seize, which made the rudder lock at its last ordered position. Now, I chose this story because it is just incredible that such a small piece, the O-ring, can cause such an incredible problem. And while some people on the site, this fired up a lot of people on the website, mostly not angry, just disappointed, just like, like Jonathan Williams, he says simply little details can matter. And, people talking about working with the lowest bidder, but like everything down to the O-ring, when it's maintenance, when it's predictive preventative maintenance, you just got to look at everything and every part that's going into a system. I thought this was a good reminder of it. And I have like a special place in my heart because the first product I ever wrote up in the industry was the O-ring. And I do, because if you remember back when we did Product Design and Development Magazine, if you remember, we used to do the funny titles for the products, and it was the Lord of the O-rings. And I don't know, for whatever reason that stood out. So I was just like, man, O-rings still out there making it happen, causing all kinds of trouble. Anna, I don't know if you had a chance to see this story, but I just, when you think of a 2 millimeter piece of debris causing a giant bulk carrier to crash into a giant concrete pylon, that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot to say. It's like that's a tough lesson right there.
Yeah.
But we've covered it in so many different incidents where it's a seemingly insignificant piece of equipment or a little connector or something, and it just a fastener, and it turns into this huge catastrophe. So always attention to detail, I think, is the takeaway here.
Sure. And Jeff, I mean, I feel like it has been the components causing millions of dollars in damage has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. I don't know that you can get smaller than a 2 millimeter piece.
Well, as we get more precise, we get these systems that are going to last longer, more accurate, all of the benefits that we gain from efficiencies and productivities. It becomes that little granular elements that trip them up. One of the examples, and maybe this isn't the best one, but the AK-47 machine gun lasted for decades. It was used by all sorts of Eastern European militaries. One of the things that was good about it is it was very difficult for it to cease operations. It jammed very easily because it wasn't actually made that great.
Oh, yeah.
The tolerances and the tightness within there with the bolt action and everything wasn't great. But you could throw anything in that thing and it'll still fire because it was loose and it had the ability to kind of function haphazardly, if you will.
Still worked.
Not the most accurate, not the most reliable, but man, it can put a ton of rounds downrange in a lot of different crappy environments. Transition to the first rifle that I was given in the military, the M16, man, we would take that through. You had to make sure everything was locked up and closed up because if you got sand in there, it would jam in a heartbeat. Okay. It would just be you would have to take it apart and clean it before you could continue using it. So again, looking at this situation here, it's those trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
That rifle was much more accurate, much more reliable than the AK-47, but the little things could trip it up more easily too.
Yeah.
And those are some of the trade-offs that we have going through these product development cycles. And again, makes it that attention to detail that much more important. The blocking and tackling, if you will.
We will.
Once again, comes around. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So, David, you always say you like to kind of predict what I might pick for some of these stories or what Anna and I might predict. This one could not be a surprise when you saw this. No.
When I wrote up this story, I was just like, this is going to be Jeff's in case you missed it.
I love a good ag tech story. So the one I picked here didn't get a lot of attention was John Deere acquiring a drone camera maker to integrate aerial feed scouting. So John Deere announced the acquisition of Centera. They're a St. Paul, Minnesota-based company that provides remote imagery solutions for agriculture. John Deere's this is going to complement a lot of stuff John Deere is already doing and provides farmers and ag service providers with a more comprehensive set of tools to generate and use data to make decisions that improve farm profitability, efficiency, and sustainability. Basically, what this company does, Centera, in addition to the drones, what they really have is the software and the camera technology to fly over the fields and take different images and capture data related to how fields are performing. They can create things called weed maps. This is pretty cool because one of the biggest challenges is the proper application of herbicides within a field. Right now, it's basically let's spray the field. It's very costly for farmers, and let's be honest, nobody, including the farmer, wants to put more herbicide on the product than they absolutely have to.
Yeah.
What this is going to allow them to do is control their costs, control their application times, all of those things because they can focus on just the areas that need it. And very specifically, the pests or the disease or whatever is plaguing those plants. They can be much more precise in what they do. This imagery is also going to provide them with different data related to the stress of the ground, different pests that might be there, not just bugs and disease, but if there's a deer herd close by, maybe the drone's going to be able to help you figure that out and apply, again, the right measures to prevent and improve crop yield. I love the integration of all this technology, and this is not super complex. We're talking about a drone and software that can be downloaded and used. There's AI involved here to help create these maps. And anything that we can do, right now we're in this transition away from the family farm. We're getting into more corporate farms to take advantage of efficiencies and productivity and the pricing pressures that are out there. This type of technology is going to allow this to come back full circle, in my opinion, because we will get there. Everything runs in modes. We will circle back to these more family-oriented businesses, which is what they are. They're small businesses when you talk about farms, being able to be competitive and contribute to the global food supply. They're going to be essential moving forward, and this types of technology, I just love seeing it implemented, especially by a company like John Deere that's so fully ingrained in this market already.
That's we see all this smart ag technology, but when it becomes associated with John Deere, when it's an acquisition, then you're just like, okay, it's real. I know that the farm of the future is actually the farm now, but it is wild to think that we're going to have these drones, kind of precision, taking care of weeds, while we also have mounted lasers to shoot or to keep other wildlife out of the field. I think of when I drive home to my dad's house, right? And how you pass fields and all you see are, rows of corn or whatever. And, it's just going to be out past that same field, and there'll be a couple of drones in the sky, and there'll be a couple of...
Well, what you're going to have is these drones go out, create the maps, send that to the autonomous tractors that can then go out and just apply where they need to.
Yeah.
And again, these could be electric vehicles, these could be electric tractors, they could be a lot of different elements that are controlling costs, improving environmental impact, and improving efficiencies and productivities. Well,
Anna, the other thing that stood out to me about this story is that it's clear that John Deere has made, as we've seen ag machinery equipment sales kind of drop, particularly of late, John Deere is making a very clear play to be sort of a technology provider. And I think this is a very obvious step in the right direction to, as an addition to their platform.
Yeah, and I think they have to, because if you look at the impact of climate on farming in the last, 10 years or so, and some of the really harsh and unpredictable weather and terrible seasons that some of these farms have endured, they need to take every step that they can to retain a good harvest every year. And that's going to involve a lot of technology. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's how are we going to pay the bills and make sure that we can actually, produce and sell our product. So yeah, I mean, I also find this field to be incredibly interesting because, you get to see, I think some things that are a little bit ahead of their time in other applications hit ag first. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, this is pretty exciting to see.
All right. Well, what is your, in case you missed it? In case I almost missed it.
We got time.
I almost missed it. Yeah.
So I grabbed two stories that I just wanted to wrap up, two really old scandals quickly. I thought it was interesting that these stories both broke in the same week. One is about VW and Dieselgate, and one is about Boeing and the 737 MAX crashes. Mm-hmm. Both incidents happened a while back.
Oh, yeah.
Dieselgate was 10 years ago, and the MAX crashes started, I think, in 2019. Mm-hmm. Still, the long arm of the law is involved here. So I thought these stories would have made the podcast if we had the podcast then.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So a German court on Monday convicted 4 former Volkswagen managers of fraud and gave 2 of them prison sentences. This case has been ongoing for the last 4 years. But it was over their part in the manipulation of emissions controls within Volkswagen vehicles. Almost a decade after this scandal initially erupted. So the former head of diesel development was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. The head of drivetrain electronics to 2 years and 7 months. This is in Germany. 2 others received suspended sentences of 15 months and 10 months. The company has paid more than $33 billion in fines to date. There's still proceedings open against 31 other suspects in Germany involved in this case.
Yeah.
To give you a feel for how far-reaching the implications and the fallout have been for Volkswagen. 2 VW managers received prison sentences in the U.S., but really the crackdown has been in Germany, by and large. So I was kind of stunned to see that there were charges still pending after the situation took place so long ago. Mm-hmm. But the timing of it I thought was interesting as well when you consider that here in the U.S., the DOJ just announced a deal that will allow Boeing to avoid being prosecuted for the MAX crashes that took place back in 2018 and 2019. In exchange, Boeing will pay or invest more than $1.1 billion. The department is going to dismiss the fraud charges against Boeing, allowing the manufacturer to avoid a possible criminal conviction that could have jeopardized the company's status as a federal contractor. Mm. So, 2 very different places, 2 very different outcomes.
Very different ways of doing business.
Yeah. I just thought to see them against each other, same week, those were both announced. That was pretty incredible.
It's also interesting to see, where there's a culture of a little bit more accountability and expectations from senior leadership at companies. And we've pretty much done everything other than say the words too big to fail, right?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have even said that.
They've said, okay. I haven't seen it very explicitly, but no, I thought it was, and the VW story broke during the holiday. So it was just man, what a whisper of a conclusion.
It really was.
To Dieselgate, where people are just oh, that's still a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we moved on. But no, I thought it was a very interesting conclusion to both Jeff, what did you think of new things both at VW and Boeing?
Now, the VW stuff is really intriguing because of how long it's been going on and really the longstanding fallout that this is having just on that company in terms of all the investments they want to make now in electric vehicles moving forward. Mm-hmm. People, I think, were skeptical if this was more of a political move than a real strategic one. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out because they're still just paying in more ways than one for all their mistakes. When it comes to the Boeing stuff, their tentacles are just in everything when it comes especially to the U.S. infrastructure, not just air transportation, but the Department of Defense and everything else. They are definitely getting off easy here.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's jump into our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
We just concluded Memorial Day weekend, and we had a pretty low-key weekend at home with the family. We did a lot of barbecuing with friends, and my 7-year-old daughter yesterday refused watermelon and basically said she had enough. She was burned out on watermelon. I'm like,
it's too early in the season.
It is, but I also felt like that was a testament to how quality our weekend was.
Yeah. No, that's a kid that burns out.
She loves it too. Yeah. So she was just like, I just can't. I've overdone it.
Yeah. I need to take a break. No, that's really cool. It was the Memorial Day holiday was a nice break, and I hope everyone had a chance to kind of relax. The other thing that's wrapping up, and we've kind of talked about it, is the end of the school year. My kid has field day coming up, and I like it to be like the one thing I can volunteer as a parent to do. And that one's still up in the air for Friday. But, I just want to say that he's done really well. He's come a long way this year, and I'm really proud of him. And he doesn't watch this. So also note to all the parents out there that, if you're proud of your kids, you should probably tell it to them to their face and more often, because a lot of times you think it, but you're not saying it to them. So it's important. Make sure your kids know. Jeff, your final thought this week.
I was also kind of on the weekend. I was actually thinking about this last night. Do you guys fly a flag Memorial Day? Put the flag out?
I don't. We don't have a flagpole. But, so our kids this year went and planted flags at a cemetery.
Reason I ask is ignorance is kind of bliss when it comes to handling the flag and knowing how to do. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want to say, I know all the rules, if you will, to displaying the flag. So it's always that time at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night when I forgot to bring the flag in, where I need to go out because I know I can't just grab the pole and bring the flag in. I need to take it off and fold it the proper way and store it, or just turn the light on.
Oh, yeah.
It's always that debate. And that happened every night, and I pretty much just turned the light on. Until last night, I figured it was probably time to take it down. Yeah. So I was trying to do it with one person, and folding the flag properly, one person is not an easy task. Yeah. So don't Google proper displaying of the flag because it'll just be, just ignorance is bliss.
I think, I don't know. I'm the other way on that, where I think that people could do a lot more in terms of learning. It's simple to learn how to respect the flag, and especially because it'll fire a lot of people up to see you doing it wrong.
Yeah, I just think the display of patriotism and unity is more important than knowing how to properly fold it.
Oh no, I agree. But like I was saying, how my kids were like they were planting flags at a veteran cemetery. Like one of my kids was not fired, but he was just reassigned because he couldn't stop dropping the flags, and it was just like you can't touch the ground. Yeah. And getting through to a 4-year-old about that is it's just like no, you're way better at
big picture, small picture, yeah.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Make sure to open that one too. And you can subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live, except for those days when we go Wednesday. All right, for Jeff Franke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.